When Man City buys a player, we talk about the more options that they have. But when Arsenal buys a player, you're asking the question, who is he going to replace in the team? No, there's no set out starting 11 for any manager. This is modern day football. Different games require different roles, require different players. And welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel Cranting. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, share the content. You like it. Trust me, you love the video. You love the content over here. So let's talk about Arsenal. Look, they've been doing some brilliant transfers or some brilliant business during the summer transfer window. Of course, I'm very sure Arsenal fans will be very delighted during this period. In fact, I think from January when I spoke and I did that video about Jurrien, I think Arsenal fans have come to appreciate the sort of player that he is. He's one of my favorite players in the world of football today. And Arsenal have managed to land another one of my favorites in Kai Havertz, which I think is a fantastic deal. Now, I'll start by saying, I don't necessarily subscribe to it, especially when it comes to conversations around Arsenal. When it seems like when Arsenal buys a player, then people start asking where is he going to play or who is he going to get out of the team. And I think that's absolute nonsense. Let me just be plain and simple. Because when Man City buys a player, we talk about the more options that they have. But when Arsenal buys a player, you're asking the question, who is he going to replace in the team? No, there's no set out starting 11 for any manager. This is modern day football. Different games require different roles, require different players. Again, the principles are the same. Managers' principles do not change. But tactics may change and instructions may change. And the instructions may mean that different players will need to come in and take up those instructions. And if you watched Arsenal throughout the whole of last season, you could clearly see, especially in the second half of the season, they were lacking options. They were lacking options in terms of tactical variation. So there were games where, if you remember the two games against Manchester City, and I'll start with the one at the Emirates. That game was evenly balanced. No team was able to carve each other open. The Man City goal came from a Tomiyasu mistake. The Arsenal goal came from a penalty. But then it reached the block where Manchester City could turn on the bench and bring on players to change their tactical variation, which meant that Arsenal also needed to respond. But Teta looks on his bench and he doesn't have anybody who is of the caliber to come and do that. This time around, Arsenal have gone for Kai Havertz now. They've added to, and I think he will be more suited in the attack. They've gotten Declan Rice, who I'll get to, an absolutely brilliant player, especially in the modern day setting. And the sort of tool that if you're an opposition fan, you will not want in the hands of Pep Guardiola or Mikel Arteta. And then it looks like Arsenal also going to complete a deal for Jurrien Timber. So I'll use this video just to touch on the 3 transfers because 2 of them have already happened. It looks like the Jurrien Timber one is going to happen. So let me start off with Kai Havertz. Brilliant player, absolutely brilliant player, very intelligent. But the problem with Havertz is that he never ever got, or he hardly got a long run during his Chelsea career when managers understood him and played him in the role that was best suited to him. We saw him at Bayer Leverkusen. He was not a number 9, he was sort of a half 9, someone who was bouncing off the main striker or like a second striker sort of thing. He comes to Chelsea, Frank Lampard pushed him onto the right hand side to be able to be cutting in. And you see, it's not about the positions, it's about the instructions given and the role given. Because when you look at his time under Frank Lampard, he was asked to play like a traditional winger. And that was always going to be difficult for him. He doesn't have that pace, he doesn't have that skill to be able to isolate defenders and take them on one-on-one. That is not in his game. And Lampard made that same mistake with Hakim Ziyech. But then comes in Thomas Tuchel, who plays him in a false 9 position where he has the likes of his German friend, Timo Werner, coming into that centre forward position. He could drift out wide. And you couldn't, yes, on paper he was playing as a false 9, but he had that freedom to bounce around the various attacking positions, be it go to the left a little, stay in the center, drop deeper, go onto the right hand side. And that suits him best because Havertz thrives. And if you look at during his time in Bayer Leverkusen, the sort of goals he scored were goals where he was arriving late in the box. So he's not the main man, he's not making the main run. he's making the decoy run, and then the ball finds him, sort of a Frank Lampard. The fact that Frank Lampard was scoring a lot of goals for Chelsea didn't mean that if you were going to stick him in a centre forward position, he would do well. No, a goal scorer is not always a striker. They are very different things. A goal scorer is not always a striker. And the sort of runs that Havertz was making at Bayer Leverkusen was as a result of the role that was given him, which also translated in the goals that he was scoring. So under Tuchel, the reason why he excelled largely during the time under Tuchel was because of the sort of role that he was given. He wasn't that target man, main number 9 who was sitting up top waiting for the balls. He had that freedom to move around and bounce off players who were interchanging positions with him. And then comes Potter, who plays him as a main number 9. And funny enough, sadly deceives the entire Premier League that Havertz is a bad player. But if you look at the Arsenal number 9 role, and you look at what Gabriel Jesus has done with it, the fact that he's not required to be sitting there in the box waiting for the ball, that freedom, the ability to drop deep, interchange positions. Sometimes Saka who's moving in. Most times last season we saw Martinelli moving into that number 9 position. We saw Gabriel Jesus going out wide. That fluidity and the ability for him to be able to make the late runs into the box will help Havertz. And this is another thing I've learned over the years. The way football is going and the way football is advancing, it's very important to understand that we are sort of moving away from traditional roles. Okay, now when you're looking at when you want to understand how a player will fit into a manager's system or a team, you look at the skill set of the player, the attributes of a player, and not necessarily the position of the player. So I'll give you a quick example. Okay, if Tony Pulis was the head coach of Man United, and Tony Pulis likes to play a 4-4-2. He likes 2 big strikers up top, and he likes to hit the ball at them. Those strikers hardly ever are judged by their technical quality on the ball. They are judged by their muscle, their ability to wrestle off defenders, win possession in terms of headers, flick-ons, things like that. So, and this is an example. So if you look at Harry Maguire, and the way Harry Maguire almost always wins his individual duels. In fact, that's one of the main reasons why Man United went for him. If you notice at the tail end of last season, in the last minutes of games, when teams are beginning to go long, Ten Hag brings on Harry Maguire. Why? Because he's that sort of player who can tag onto an opposition forward and win one-on-one duels. So in the spirit of modern day football and looking at players' skill set and attributes, a Tony Pulis could play Harry Maguire as a centre forward, because that system doesn't require a centre forward having the skill to drop deep and play interpassing. That system requires a centre forward to be able to use his muscle and his physique to be able to wrestle off defenders and win possession. And the goals can always come later. So it also translates to the sort of evolution we've seen with Mikel Antonio, coming from a right back to a right wing back to a right winger. Now he's a striker. If you look at the sort of striker Mikel Antonio is, he's not the same sort of striker that Gabriel Jesus is, or it's not the same sort of striker that Harry Kane is. Because his system thrives on his ability to use his strength to wrestle off defenders, win balls. He's not the best technically, but he will win his chances by using his strength. But if in another team, if you take Mikel Antonio as a striker and you put him in an Arsenal, you put him in a Man City, he'll be exposed because of his lack of his technical ability. So that's what I'm talking about, focusing on a player's skill set, not necessarily the position that they are coming from or the position that in terms of traditional positions. So that's what I'm coming to. With Havertz, if you look at his skill set and his attributes, he fits perfectly into this Arsenal team because of the fluidity of the attack. Let's move on to Declan Rice. Again, modern day coaches, tactics always change. Principles don't. If you look at Arsenal 2 seasons ago, the Arsenal team that finished 5th, and you compare that to the Arsenal team that played last season, the tactical instruction and player roles were completely different, but the principles remain the same. In terms of Arteta loves to keep possession, he loves to keep a certain high tempo, wants his players to press high and create opportunities. That's what Arsenal were doing. They were not doing it as efficiently as they did last season, but those principles were there. But in terms of tactics and in terms of player roles, if you look at Martinelli's instructions 2 seasons ago, you look at Martinelli's instructions last season, they were different. You get me? If you look at how Xhaka was used 2 seasons ago and how Xhaka was used last season, it was different. So you can't necessarily pin Declan Rice in last season's Arsenal team and say he's going to do this. How you should look at it is a skill set of Declan Rice in the various roles and various positions that he's played in, and what he can do. He's a fantastic carrier of the ball. He's a very good passer of the ball, and he's comfortable with the ball in any area of the pitch. We've seen him with West Ham where he's played much deeper. When the ball is at his feet, he doesn't panic when he's under pressure. We've seen him advance into more the attacking third. He looks quite relaxed in those positions, in those situations. Even with England, when he has played with Calvin Phillips, when they interchange roles, somebody sits, somebody goes, somebody sits, somebody goes. He seems very comfortable in the various roles that they've given him in and around the midfield, sometimes even as a centre back. So again, that's why I'm saying that he's a sort of player that as an opposition fan, you would really hope doesn't fall into the hands of Mikel Arteta or Pep Guardiola, but he has. And what it gives Arsenal is different tactical variations. Different. You can have a midfield of Jorginho, Odegaard, and Rice, and they can do very different things at very different times in the same game. And that is the strength that Arsenal have this time around. Odegaard, extremely comfortable on the ball. That is the basics and in terms of the principles. Rice, Odegaard, Jorginho, very comfortable in the ball. So they feed into that thinking of Arsenal keeping the ball in terms of possession. When it comes to individual deployment, they can both, or the three of them can do very, very different things. So that is where I think Arteta has gotten it right, and that is why I felt like it was worth the money. Pay anything you can, or pay anything you are willing to get Declan Rice. And I think Arsenal have backed an immense signing. He's going to be huge. And also remember that Arsenal are playing the Champions League next season. Last season during the Europa League, people say yes, it's Thursday night, it's almost the same thing in terms of fixtures, but in terms of seriousness, it's very different. In a Champions League game, like what Arsenal did last season, you can't play Lokonga and El Neni in a Champions League game on a Tuesday, Wednesday night and expect them to sail through the group stages. You will still have to play your best players. It means the Jorginhos, the Odegaards, the Rice, the Sakas and Co will still have to play during midweek. So Arsenal are literally going to be playing midweek weekend until maybe they exit the Champions League scene. So that is where the difference comes in. So you need players, and you need quality players all round who you can call upon. Because if something happens to Jorginho, and that's a beautiful thing about this Arsenal team, if something happens to Jorginho, Rice can fill in that Jorginho role and do it very well. Rice can do what Xhaka was doing because he has the intelligence, he has the skill set to be able to do it. Rice can do what Xhaka was doing 2 seasons ago in terms of his restricted movements and sticking very close to Thomas Partey in the midfield. So he offers them very, very different things tactically, and that is brilliant. Lastly, we'll go to the Jurrien Timber deal. And again, this is the reason why I'll say it and I'll say it again. For Arsenal fans, they have every reason to be confident and every reason to be happy, because this is a team that is well structured, that has a clear identity of how they want to play, and they know the players who can come in and give them exactly that. Let me tell you why this Jurrien Timber deal is absolutely brilliant. You ask yourself, where does Jurrien Timber play? He can play as a right-sided centre back, in a 4-back. He can play as a right back. He can even play as a right-sided centre back, or a centre back in terms of the one of the three in the 3-back system in the middle. So again, you look at his skill sets. He's brilliant on the ball, excellent under pressure in terms of his passing. He's a very good carrier of the ball. If you've watched him, he can drive and break the lines with his ball carrying ability. And soundly, when it comes to simple defensive principles, he's a very good defender. Now, where does he come into this Arsenal team? And again, don't think about who is he going to remove or what sort of starting 11 is Arsenal going to have. There's a Champions League, you can't predict a starting 11. Pep Guardiola, nobody can predict Pep Guardiola's starting 11. And that is when you have options, that is the advantage that you have. He can play play in the role that Ben White was playing last season. If you look at Arsenal's form after Saliba got injured, Jurrien Timber can fill in that position. And I can even argue that he may be at par or even better than William Saliba in terms of what he offers and the specific instructions that are assigned to that role that he's been given. It provides you options. Arsenal can even decide to go to a back three and play Gabriel, Saliba, and Jurrien Timber in there. Ben White can even play in the centre back. Jurrien Timber goes to right back. It's about options. And a top team like Arsenal needs those options when they are going into the Champions League. So all these signings that Arsenal have made, I think that the three are brilliant. They fit excellently into what they want to do. And I'll say this to end. It just smacks of a team that is very serious about maintaining the elite status that they've re-established. Arsenal had fallen off for a very long time. Arteta during his first 2 seasons didn't do too well. Then 2 seasons ago they finished 5th. Last season they mounted a very strong title challenge. They are 2nd. It just shows of a team that is not satisfied being in the top 4. They want to win, and that is the mentality of any top team. And I salute Arsenal for that. That is absolutely brilliant. In this particular video, I actually want to hear the views of Arsenal fans in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share the content, and catch you in the next episode.